Clemson's safety room has been pretty much a big question mark for Tiger fans, but not so much for Mickey Khan. We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're new to the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're an everydayer, you know how we do it here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content, Monday through Friday, all throughout the week. Don't forget to follow me over on X as well at The Morgan T Show. We can talk about all things Clemson as we get further along in the college football off season, as we get closer and closer to the beginning of the college football season. I'm excited. You know, it's Solid Orange Friday here, so I got my orange on. I'm really excited because I just got endorsed for my CFI check ride coming up, hopefully in another month. So I'll be heading back home tomorrow. So you'll get used to my old backdrop in my office back home. So you'll see a little bit of changes here on the show, but very, very excited about some of the updates for me, but also some of the updates that we are hearing from the coaches on the Clemson football staff. Before we get into those thoughts and what's coming up on today's show, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's Monarch Money over on monarchmoney.com. Coming up again today, we're going to talk about the safety room, that big kind of question mark for me on that defensive side of the ball. What are the coaches telling us about this safety room? And, you know, the coaches, obviously, at the beginning of the season, preseason, getting into the fall practice, they're going to be more and more hyping up their players, getting them ready for the 2025 season, getting them as confident as possible for their big battles throughout the 2025 season as they continue to fight through a 12-game regular season and then hopefully into the playoffs. But we know, as Clemson fans, we know, as those of us who analyze the game and watch the games and understand the roster management, us roster management junkies out there, we know that Clemson's safety room is a little bit thinner than we have had in the past. Right now, you're looking at strong safety in Kylan Griffin. You're looking at a free safety in Ricardo Jones. And if I asked you right now, of those two players, how much do you really know about them? Well, we know that Kylan Griffin, I know he's number 8. Ricardo Jones, I know he's number 6. Ricardo Jones, I know that he had a impactful spring. And actually, the last 2 seasons, he's had a pretty good spring, in my opinion. And then Kylan Griffin, we know that he's had a couple of important turnovers when he's been on the field. Kylan Griffin, a redshirt junior, that's now 4 years into the program. Ricardo Jones, a true sophomore, now just 2 years, is really 1 year in the program. So you see, we've got some question marks there about what kind of consistency we're going to get, what kind of, we know that they're talented, but what are we truly going to get with their decision-making, with their consistency, with their ability to adjust as the season goes on, and also with their, dexterity, I guess you could say. I don't know if that's the right word, but just ability to withstand the pain and the amount of punishment you get through a whole season. Will they be able to stay healthy as the season goes on? Because beyond them, when you look at the safety position and the free safety position, you have Rob Billings as a redshirt sophomore, and you have Tyler Venables as a graduate student. Yes, again, I said that. Tyler Venables, a guy who's returning again from being with Clemson for probably 15 years at this point. Joking aside, he's definitely been around a long time. T-Bone is a guy who's a leader on the team on the defensive side of the ball and is Clemson through and through. I mean, his dad moved to Oklahoma to their dream schools, to his dad's dream school, and they stayed. So Tyler Venables really, really shows how bought in he's in with Clemson. I'd be surprised if he doesn't just stick around after he graduates. Well, he's already graduated, but after he eventually graduates. But Tyler Venables is there. You know what you're going to get from him. The field speed, not your best, but you're getting a lot of leadership. You're getting a lot of understanding and trust from him being able to run the plays. And then Rob Billings, if I asked 5 Clemson fans who Rob Billings was, nobody would really know. If I asked you what he's going to bring to the table, nobody would really know. And same thing goes for Kylan Webb, another redshirt sophomore. So these guys are in their 3rd season now with Clemson, and there's a big, huge unknown around those 2 guys. And I think that those are the guys that really, when you think about it, are going to need to step up the most, because there has to be somewhat of a rotation. I don't think you're going to keep sticking with just Kylan Griffin or just Ricardo Jones on the field for the entire season. And then you have even Ronan Hannifan, who we'll talk about in the second segment, and how he is progressing towards possibly being in that mix as well. But he is transitioning from a wide receiver role to a defensive back role or to a safety role. And I don't really know how quickly he'll be able to do that. We'll have to see as the season goes on. RJ Mickens is the big guy that they're trying to replace because he's left for the NFL. And the safety unit, the big question is, are they going to elevate or are they going to regress? RJ Mickens delivered in a lot of big-time tackles last season, 85 tackles, 3rd on the team, plus 6 tackles for loss, 7 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. I mean, RJ Mickens' stat line was really good before he got picked up by the Chargers. So, a guy who was drafted in the NFL, there is going to be a little bit of a void, a little bit of a leadership gap, a little bit of a talent gap between what you had with RJ Mickens to now these guys on the field that outside of Kylan Griffin, you haven't seen a ton of true reps. And Tyler Venables, you haven't seen a ton of true reps. So how is that deep secondary going to work against a team like LSU that I've already covered is going to be legitimately scary at the wide receiver positions because of the speed? Now they don't have the consistency on the stat lines. They don't, have that, but they do have what we know is proven raw talent and speed on the wide receiver position to test your deep secondary and your safeties there. Safeties coach Mickey Kahn came out publicly this week and emphasized that he felt there were no question marks. I mean, maybe he has no question marks. I think that's great. If he has no question marks, the coach shouldn't have any, but I don't know if that's actually 100% believable for me, because I definitely have some question marks. Those guys that I mentioned are guys we have not seen. Now, thankfully, Mickey Kahn is the coach, and he's definitely seen them. So I do trust his evaluation. I trust his ability to do that. Will these guys be able to step up? Will they be able to gain the experience needed quickly? Will they be able to rotate properly? Will they be able to stagger, the progression of these guys? Because the worst thing you can do is have 2 green guys out there at the same time and they don't know what they're doing and get mixed up and allow a huge chunk play that is going to be demoralizing and difficult to keep up with. Adding in your nickelback like Khalil Barnes, like a Shelton Lewis in that rotation, and like Ronan Hannifan, those guys will be able to supplement as well. But I'm talking about your true safety position. How will they work out? Who will it be? Who is going to be your true proven anchor? Will Khalil Barnes have to move back? Will he move away from nickelback position to move back a little more back into a safety position? Will Ronan Hannifan be able to kind of rotate and spell out there as well? Has he developed enough? Will Ricardo Jones build on what he did as a freshman in the spring and be a guy that you can trust every single snap out there? I mean, that is a true sophomore out there that I know has a lot of talent. My biggest thing for me, though, is those competitive third-year guys that really, to me, need to step up. Your Rob Billings and your Kylan Webb, those guys are both redshirt sophomores. And they have been in this program long enough that they need to step up, and they need to be reliable, dependable, and ultimately available when needed. Now, how much time will they get? It is going to be a huge physical check for them to be able to get into the game and show us what they can do consistently. It's going to be a huge mental check for them and a maturity check for them to do that. But to me, you have to lean on those guys that were your most experienced guys. And who else other than Tyler Venables will be that guy? I mean, Kylan Griffin is your most senior guy, but then after that, Rob Billings and Kylan Webb. So those guys have to kind of be in the rotation and show us what they can do. They've taking up a scholarship here. And I don't mean that in a negative way in any way, but they have done what they needed to do to stay on the team and to build their progress. Now, to me, those two guys, it's time to see a little bit of the benefit of reward. See a little bit of what the benefits of their hard work. That's really the angle that I would take with those guys. Considering they're the next in line with being most senior on the team, I'd like to see what they can do sooner rather than later. In this era of you're going to, in the 2025 season, Dabo Swinney has a schedule, and Clemson has a schedule where they're going to have to show up early. And so you're not going to have the first game of the season to kind of work through these kinks. They need to figure out what they can do in the fall. Right now, when we get into August, they need to figure out what their safety position is. Although I say that while at the same time, Mickey Kahn, the actual coach, is saying, hey, you know what? We have no question marks. We know exactly what we got. If that is the case, then maybe this is just me overreacting. Maybe I'm just being a nervous fan. But to me, one of the biggest question marks going into 2025 is that safety position. And we'll talk about one specific guy because he made the big move. Talked about Billings and Webb. We'll talk about Ronan Hannifan as that possible wild card for 2025. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Now, you've told me, I've told you many times that I love Monarch Money because it helps me work well together with my wife. We're able to be on the same page and have shared accounts to where we can make sure that our goals are on the same page without having to get too in the weeds of who owns what account. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Now, I know we talked a lot about wide receivers and running backs and tight ends recently, but we really haven't talked much about that safety position other than this episode. And so I wanted to get into Ronan Hannifan as well. He's an extremely athletic player. I mean, got a huge upside for his athletic ability and his ability to kind of catch up and catch on to what it takes to be able to understand the playbook and the strategy and the schemes with the defense and the offense has been pretty good from what I'm hearing. And his ability to catch up, because he needs to transition, and he has transitioned now to the offense or the defensive side of the ball from the offensive side of the ball. He was a wide receiver when they brought him in. But now, last season, he logged a ton of snaps on the defensive side of the ball. And under Tom Allen, he's starting to and Mickey Kahn starting to get more used to that scheme, understand what he needs to do in different scenarios, and be more confident with kind of inside his head how being on the same page with what the coaches want from him. Now, Mickey Khan has mentioned and praised him so far, saying that he has made huge gains in being able to understand the game behind the game, understand why he is doing certain things, understand the playbook much better, and what he needs to do to be successful on the defense. Now, obviously, he has those physical traits that they like. That's why they brought him in general as an athlete overall. It didn't work out for the wide receiver position. It was just too full there. But on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the secondary position, it seems to where that could be an area where we could leverage, or Clemson could leverage, his athletic ability. If he can be able to master what is needed for him on the defensive side of the ball, I do feel like that he can earn a rotational spot. Now, could he earn a starting role? I think that's a little bit of a stretch, in my opinion. I don't think that they'll be able to get him to that level, or he will be able to get to that level. If he does, I will back up and take back what I said. But to me, he is a rotational guy. Now, you look, they kind of put him on the nickelback position, similar to Khalil Barnes, someone who could play in the slot, someone who could play against a tight end, someone who could bracket when needed. And I do think that they will need to do that against LSU. And then you have possibility of having him as a safety as well. It just depends on his recovery speed, his hip movement, and his ability to kind of keep the ball in front of him, keep the ball in the defender in front of him. I would feel as if the bracketing role for him on the nickelback position would be better because you have those safety valves, someone else taking over that safety valve instead of just being him, because he is still very new to what they're trying to get him to do. I think Tom Allen calls it like a tiger position or the robber position or whatever you want to say, but to be able to match up against smaller size slot players, wide receivers, or even larger tight ends that he's more athletic than, could be a good mismatch there, or a good confusion to the quarterback. Again, he obviously has that physical profile to be successful at the college level. It's just getting him in the right position to be able to see his full potential. Could this be a year where he is rotational? Or is this another year where he's really going to just have to figure it out and there's maybe a big learning curve? I think it kind of is up to him and what his ability to kind of pick up what they need from him quickly. If he's able to kind of stay ahead of the learning curve and really gain that trust with the coaches, then that's where I'll think that they'll give him more of a rotational chances. But again, as I mentioned with Clemson's schedule, this schedule, even in the ACC, is a much more difficult schedule than we've seen even just last year. You have two powerhouse SEC teams, well, at least one, and then you have some good ACC teams that are going to want a lot of revenge against Clemson as well. I think his versatility will help him, but I'm still going to label him more of an experiment. I don't know what we're going to get from him. I do like what we saw with our early returns from the spring, but yeah, I'm not too confident that he's going to push his way through super early during the season. Because for me, I'm hearing a lot of great things about Khalil Barnes. We already know how great of a leader he is and what he's been able to bring to the table. Khalil Barnes just needs to settle in. We already know and hear a ton of things about Shelton Lewis, about how this is his time to step up in a different role now, more of that nickel position instead of a cornerback position. So Shelton Lewis could be a guy who I think is your number two there behind Khalil Barnes. I trust Shelton Lewis a lot. I think that him being a true junior, this could be a really big pay year for him as well. Not saying that he'll immediately go to the NFL or anything, but I think this will help build towards what possible options he could have in the future. So I like Barnes and Lewis first, and then Hannifan after him. If Hannifan were to move up to a secondary position, it'd be really all about how much he can handle, the different role there. I would like for him to have that bracket position probably number one versus having a deep safety position, if that makes sense. So depth is going to get tested. I know Mickey Khan, based on what we're reading, he is, and what he's telling us is that he has no question marks. And, this season's going to be amazing. And, we don't need to worry about anything. I'd love to believe that. I'd love to be kind of carefree about what I think about Clemson's secondary, but it is a concern. And my biggest thing is you don't want the very first game of the season to see your secondary get torched. And unfortunately, LSU is, as you know, because you've listened to this show, LSU is a team that could be, that team that's like ready to do that. They're ready to embarrass you. And I don't want to see that in Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina. So while there may be, no question marks for the coaches, there's still definitely some prove it for me as a fan. All right, we'll finish up the show and the weekend or the week starting or closing out with some discussion on NIL and how it could impact Clemson and the changes that are going on. So the President Trump, is getting in on some possible executive orders to work through updating and enhancing the NIL bills, making them more consistent across the board, making them more equitable across the board, and kind of getting away some of these unfair advantages. And I mentioned I don't want federal regulation on this at all. But this is the only way I think that we can move forward, because if you leave it up to the states, then what we're seeing is that different states are going to have different rules, and a lot of states are going to have rules that could be more beneficial to certain teams than other teams that are not in that state. So you're not on a complete, true even playing field if you ever were, but it's not as good when you can do one thing legally in your state and another team cannot in their state. So this could be one of those things that impacts all college football teams. But as Clemson fans, we need to be aware of how the changes, are impacting us as we continue to go through, all of this craziness with college football. They're still just being talked about right now. The college sports world with the money that is being spread around, it is very messy. It is very uneven. I would love a more transparent national set of rules, whether it's federally backed rules or whether it's some sort of super league that comes down. That would be my preferred. I would rather have a super league than the federal government, overseeing everything. But to me, there has to be a cleaner set of national rules for college football. They're still too segmented across what some conferences can do versus others, what some states can do versus others. And, you just never know if your state's going to be able to keep up and your legislative branch is going to be able to keep up with that. So Clemson's strength has always been culture, has always been family, and making you feel like you're a part of something. But it's also, I think, the Clemson staff beyond Dabo Swinney, and Dabo Swinney included, Clemson's been a very good staff of just planning ahead. And I think they're going to stay ahead of this as well. They're with the chatter that's coming from President Trump, plus the congressional bill that's going through. Every day seems like, a different day and a different set of rules, and, a different amount of money you can spend, a different amount of what's legal versus what's illegal. So it is definitely, as a fan, very confusing. It feels a lot like the Wild West, where a lot of things are unstable. And I think that's why Clemson does so well right now in recruiting, is because there is a lot of uncertainty and instability. But on the flip side, I've always felt as if Clemson represented themselves as the calm in the storm, as the stable, and to a frustrating degree, a little bit laggard to change from a Dabo Swinney standpoint. But still, Dabo is not trying to do things slowly on purpose. He is just very purposeful with his decision making. He's not going to jump to any kind of conclusions or just go with the motions of the rest of the world. He's going to make a decision that's calculated and based on his values. So again, as we keep talking through this, no matter how it all gets worked out, clear rules help build trust among parents of football players, among high school coaches, among high school players, among fans, and you just don't feel as if there's a bunch of shady middlemen. I would love to get rid of that. I'd love to get rid of the backroom promises that are out there, the tampering that's out there. Get rid of this element of unknown and lack of transparency. Get rid of the fear that's out there. If they can do those things, then it'll make college football better as a whole. I'm a Clemson fan and a Clemson reporter, but I am also a college football fan, and I want college football to survive and thrive. Right now, to me, I hope that we're in what I would say is the growing pains as we adjust to the modern age of college football, away from what we really felt like was a traditional aspect of it. And also, the way that they're structuring this, to me, allows the teams to budget better and the money to be more transparent, to where that's always been my concern as a donor, is to say, why do I want to give to this collective or to this organization if I don't know where my dollar is going? It's not bringing anything back to me. At least initially it wasn't. They're doing better with that, where they're giving you points and things like that now, where they're giving you some sort of benefit packages where they're better off, and you are feeling that benefit yourself. But fans deserve that transparency, and they deserve consistency from their team. And not just Clemson. Clemson has done great keeping players at home, staying at their school. But there's a lot of football teams out there. Can you imagine if Clemson just constantly had a massive amount of turnover, where, there are teams that Clemson is going to play and has played where their entire, first and second string, so 44 players are all players that weren't on the team previously. That's what really worries me as a college football fan. And that's really, unfortunately, how basketball has gone. And I don't really like it. Although Brad Brownell has done well, I'm not the biggest fan of never knowing who your starting five is going to be year in and year out at Clemson. And it really is that way all over the country, but it's pretty bad at Clemson, where the lack of consistency is definitely there, and there's no loyalty, and the transparency of players, what amount of money they're getting, and where are they all getting this money, and how are they bringing any level of return on investment to this, to me, is definitely out of hand, especially in basketball. Football has done very good at keeping it very consistent. I think that's because Dabo Swinney is just very big on paying extremely well for retention. So his strategy is obviously working out well, because, on defense, they have 2 transfer players. On offense, they have 1. What other college football team do you know does that? We've got to keep moving forward. I do like President Trump's efforts in order to do whatever he can to keep cleaning it up and make sure that they keep moving towards this goal. Because how the big players do. They get comfortable, and then they feel like, okay, well, this is a multi-billion-dollar. You're still paying all this money as a fan. We're not going to make it better for you because you don't deserve better. This is already working. And so I think you got to keep putting pressure on the big players in these leagues, and lawmakers around to make sure that they keep moving college football forward to the next era to be able to survive. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate everyone being a part of the show. This is a Friday show, end of the week. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you next week and at the top of the hill.